I never expected to discover my husband's true nature while hiding behind a potted ficus tree in our living room. Yet there I was, crouched behind its leaves at midnight, watching Chase pace back and forth with his phone pressed to his ear. My name is Willa, and until that moment I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. I'm an elementary school teacher, married to what I believed was a devoted husband, and expecting our first child. But life has a way of shattering your certainties when you least expect it. Look, Mom, Douglas's death changes everything. Chase whispered into his phone, unaware of my presence. Willa's too emotional right now to think clearly about the inheritance. This is our chance. I pressed my hand against my mouth, stifling aghast. My father had passed away just 2 weeks ago, and here was my husband plotting something about my inheritance in the middle of the night. No, listen, he continued, his voice taking on that smooth, persuasive tone I used to find charming. Once the shares are transferred, we can push for a quick sale. The company's worth millions. Willa doesn't need to know the details until it's done. My legs started cramping from squatting, but I didn't dare move. I'd only come downstairs for a glass of water, but Chase's furtive whispers had stopped me in my tracks. Of course I feel bad about it, he said, running his fingers through his hair. A gesture I now realized might have been more calculating than nervous. But think about it, we could finally get you and Dad out of debt. Get that house in Palm Springs you've always wanted. The room started spinning slightly. I studied myself against the wall, my other hand instinctively moving to my barely showing baby bump. 5 years of marriage, and I'd never heard this tone in Chase's voice before. Cold, calculating, almost predatory. Just keep this between us for now, he continued. I've already talked to Leonard about the legal angles. We just need to wait for the right moment to suggest it to Willa. You know how she gets about her father's legacy. I did get emotional about my father's legacy because it mattered. Because Dad had built his automotive company from nothing, working 16-hour days while still making time to teach me piano every Sunday. Because he believed in hard work and integrity above all else. Chase ended the call and headed upstairs. I waited until his footsteps faded before emerging from my hiding spot, my water forgotten. The moonlight streaming through our bay windows felt harsh now, highlighting all the expensive furniture Chase had insisted we needed. Furniture that I realized with growing nausea had been bought with my family's money. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Jenna, my best friend since college. Can't sleep? Saw you were online. Everything okay? I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. How could I possibly explain what had just happened? That my husband was plotting to steal my inheritance while I carried his child? That the man I trusted with my heart was apparently nothing more than a well-dressed con artist? Instead, I typed, need to talk. Breakfast tomorrow? Important. Her response came immediately. Usual place, 7 a.m. Should I be worried? I looked around our living room at all the carefully curated photos of our perfect life together. Chase and me on our honeymoon in Bali. At our wedding, where he'd charmed everyone with his tearful vows. Family gatherings where he'd played the devoted son-in-law to perfection. Not worried, I wrote back. Just angry. And planning. The morning after discovering Chase's betrayal, I sat across from Jenna at our favorite breakfast spot, methodically shredding a napkin while she processed everything I just told her. The cafe buzzed with its usual morning crowd, but all I could hear was Chase's voice from last night, plotting to steal my inheritance. That manipulative bastard. Jenna finally said, her lawyer mode kicking in. Have you checked or joined accounts? Your personal accounts. I nodded, pulling out my phone. Already did. Nothing seems off yet, but I paused as my screen lit up with a text from Chase. Having lunch with Mom and Dad today, they want to discuss some investment opportunities for the inheritance. Join us. My stomach churned. They're moving faster than I thought. I said, showing Jenna the message. She leaned back, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. You know what's interesting? Chase's law firm specializes in corporate acquisitions. I looked them up after you called. What are you saying? I'm saying this might be bigger than just Chase and his parents. Have you noticed anyone unusual hanging around your father's company lately? Before I could answer, the cafe door chimed. My mother-in-law Maureen's voice carried across the room, making me freeze mid-sentence. Willa, what a surprise. Jenna's eyes widened slightly, but I managed to smile as Maureen approached our table, designer purse swinging. She clearly just had her hair done. Probably on Chase's credit card, I realized bitterly. Just grabbing breakfast with Jenna, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. How are you? Oh, wonderful. And you're looking so pregnant and glowy. Maureen gushed, patting my stomach without asking. Chase told me you might join us for lunch today. We have such exciting ideas to discuss. I felt Jenna's foot press against mine under the table, a silent reminder to stay calm. Actually, I have a doctor's appointment. I lied smoothly. Routine checkup. But surely you can reschedule? This is about your future, your baby's future. Maureen's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened slightly. The baby's future is exactly why I can't miss it, I replied, gathering my things. Maybe next time? As we left the cafe, Jenna grabbed my arm. Okay, that was not a coincidence. She was checking up on you. Chase must have tracked my location through our shared account, I realized. I need to change my settings. You need to do more than that, Jenna said firmly. You need to protect yourself legally before they can make any moves on the company's shares. My phone buzzed again, another text from Chase. Mom said she saw you at breakfast. Everything okay? You seem distant lately. I stare at the message, remembering how Chase used to send me random texts throughout the day just to make me smile. Now each word felt calculated, part of some elaborate performance. I don't know how to keep pretending everything's normal, I admitted to Jenna. Every time he touches me or asks about the baby, I feel sick. Then don't pretend, Jenna said. Use it. Let him think you're struggling with grief over your dad. It'll buy us time to figure out exactly what they're planning. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a call from my mother, Lorraine. Honey, are you sitting down? I just got some interesting information about Chase's firm that you need to hear. I put the phone on speaker, meeting Jenna's concerned gaze. My mother's voice was tight with controlled anger as she continued. Remember that merger Dad was fighting against before he died? Guess which law firm is representing the buyers? The pieces suddenly clicked into place. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was about my father's entire legacy. And my husband had been working against him the whole time. I have to go, I told them both. I need to get home before Chase realizes something's wrong. But first I'm stopping by the bank. What are you going to do? Jenna asked. I thought about Chase's smooth lies, Maureen's calculating eyes, and my father's dreams for his company. I'm going to protect what's mine, I said. And then I'm going to make them regret ever underestimating me. After a week of playing detective in my own home, I finally found what I was looking for in Chase's home office. My hands trembled as I held the documents, merger proposals, confidential emails, and draft agreements all dated months before my father's death. The corporate logo at the top of each page felt like a slap in the face. Bennett and Associates, the firm where my husband had worked for the past 3 years. The office door creaked behind me. I whirled around to find Chase standing there, his expression unreadable. Looking for something specific, he asked, voice eerily calm. I held up the papers. How long were you planning this? Before or after Dad got sick? It's not what you think, Willa. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The merger would save the company. Your father was too stubborn to see it. Too stubborn. My voice cracked. He built that company from nothing. He trusted you, and I'm trying to protect his legacy. Chase moved closer, reaching for my hand. I stepped back, bumping into his desk. The market's changing. Without this merger, the company won't survive another 5 years. Don't. I pressed my hand against my stomach, feeling our baby kick. Don't pretend this is about protecting anything except your commission. His face hardened. You're emotional. The pregnancy hormones. Don't you dare. The rage I'd been suppressing burst free. I found the transfer documents, Chase. Already filled out, just waiting for my signature. Were you going to forge that, too? Something flickered in his eyes. Not guilt, but annoyance at being caught. Your father's death changed everything. We had to move quickly. I laughed bitterly. You mean you and your parents? How much are they getting from this deal? The sound of the front door opening interrupted us. Chase, will it? Maureen's voice floated up the stairs. We brought lunch. Chase, grab my arm. Don't make a scene. Not now. Think about the baby. I yanked away from him. That's exactly what I'm thinking about. There you are. Maureen appeared in the doorway. Leonard behind her. Her smile faltered when she saw the papers in my hand. Oh, are those the merger documents? Wonderful. We can discuss everything over lunch. Actually, I said, straightening my spine. I just got off the phone with the board members. A lie, but worth it to see Chase's face pale. Interesting how none of them knew about these negotiations. Leonard stepped forward, all smooth charm. Now, Willa, business decisions can be complicated. Like the decision to hide your firm's involvement from my father while he was dying? I watched their practice smiles crack. Or the decision to use my pregnancy as cover while you rush through the steel. You're making a mistake, Chase said quietly. This merger is happening with or without your cooperation. I thought about my father working late nights teaching me that integrity mattered more than quick profits. About my mother's warning and Jenna's legal advice. You're right about one thing, I said, pulling out my phone. Something is happening today. I pressed play on the recording app that had been running since I entered the office. Chase's earlier words filled the room. The market's changing without this merger. You recorded me? Chase's charm vanished completely. That's illegal. Actually, I said, in this state, it's perfectly legal to record conversations you're part of. But insider trading and attempted fraud, those are definitely illegal. Maureen stepped toward me, hands raised placatingly. Darling, let's all calm down. I've already sent copies to the board, the SEC, and my lawyers. I continued. Another lie, but I'd be doing it the moment I left. So here's what's going to happen. You're all going to leave my house. Now, this is my house, too. Chase snapped. Check the deed, I replied. Dad put it in my name as a wedding gift. Funny how you never noticed that detail. I walked past them, had high despite my shaking hands. At the doorway, I turned back. Oh, and Chase? I'd start looking for a good lawyer, one that doesn't work for your father. Their protests followed me down the stairs, but I didn't stop. My phone was already in my hand, texting Jenna. It's worse than we thought. Meet me at your office, bringing evidence. The emergency room's fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and unreal. I sat on the examination table, my mother clutching my hand while the doctor checked my blood pressure for the third time. Still too high, she said, frowning. How long have you been experiencing these headaches? Just the past few days. I lied. My mother's grip tightened. She knew better. The headaches had started right after I confronted Chase. My phone buzzed again. The 20th message from Chase since I'd left the house. I ignored it, just like all the others. The doctor cleared her throat. Mrs. Bennett, Harper. I corrected automatically. I'm going back to Harper. MS. Harper, then. Your blood pressure is concerning, especially at 24 weeks. I'm recommending bed rest for at least a week. A week. The merger vote was in 5 days. I can't. I started, but my mother cut me off. She'll do it, Lorraine said firmly. At my house. My phone lit up with a new message, this time from Leonard. Think about what you're doing to this family. Chase is devastated. Let's talk about this like adults. The doctor left to prepare discharge papers, and my mother finally spoke. Why didn't you tell me it was getting this bad? Because saying it out loud makes it real. I pressed my hands against my belly, feeling my daughter move. Did you know Chase was working with Carlton Industries even before Dad got sick? They were planning this takeover for months. That's why you need to step back, she said. Let Jenna and the lawyers handle it. Focus on my granddaughter. A knock at the door made us both jump. Chase stood there, still in a suit from work, looking appropriately concerned. The perfect worried husband. Thank God, he said, stepping forward. When the hospital called, get out. My mother's voice could have frozen hell. I have a right to be here. That's my child. The child you were willing to use as a distraction while you stole her inheritance. My mother stood, all 5 feet 4 inches of pure fury. The same child whose stress levels are endangering her life because of your schemes? Chase's facade cracked slightly. Willow, please. Whatever you think I did. I found the offshore accounts, I said quietly. The words dropped like stones in the sterile room. Dad suspected something was wrong before he died. He hired investigators. That hit home. Chase's face went blank. His tell when he was truly rattled. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone. Pulled out the email I'd received that morning from Dad's lawyer. Want to see the transfers? The meetings with Carlton CEO? Did you really think Dad wouldn't protect his company? Everything I did was for us. Chase said, but his eyes darted to the door. For our future. Mrs. Harper. A nurse appeared with a wheelchair. We're ready to discharge you. I'll get the car, my mother said, giving Chase a look that could strip paint. Once she left, Chase moved closer, his voice low. Think about what you're doing. One phone call, and I can make sure you never see a penny of your inheritance. I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered how I'd ever mistaken his confidence for strength. One phone call from me, and the SEC will have those offshore accounts. Want to test which call does more damage? The nurse waited patiently, pretending not to hear. Chase straightened his tie. Another tell. This isn't over. You're right, I said, letting the nurse help me into the wheelchair. It's just beginning. As I was wheeled out, my phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. Found something big in the murder docs. Chase isn't the mastermind. Someone else has been pulling the strings. I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. One battle at a time. First I needed to protect my daughter. Then I could focus on finding out who had really orchestrated my father's company's downfall. Ready to go home? My mother asked as we reached her car. No, I said, thinking of the house I'd shared with Chase, filled with expensive furniture and empty promises. But I'm ready to start fighting back. 3 days into my stay at my mother's house, Leonard Bennett showed up unannounced. I watched from the upstairs window as he charmed his way past the housekeeper. briefcase in hand, wearing the same expensive smile he'd used to convince my father to hire Chase 5 years ago. "You don't have to see him," my mother said from behind me. "Actually, I do." I smoothed my shirt over my growing belly. But not alone. 10 minutes later, Leonard sat across from me in my mother's study, with Jenna beside me and my mother standing by the fireplace, like a sentinel. "This situation has gotten out of hand," Leonard began, opening his briefcase. "I have a proposal that could benefit everyone." "Like the proposal to sell my father's company behind my back?" I kept my voice steady, remembering Jenna's coaching. Leonard pulled out a document. "Carlton Industries is offering to keep the current management team. Your father's legacy would remain intact, while Chase gets his commission and you clear gambling debts." The words hit their mark. Leonard's smile flickered. "Did you really think Dad's investigators wouldn't find those, too? Now see here." Leonard started to rise, but my mother's voice cut through the room. "Sit down, Leonard. You're not dealing with some naive socialite anymore." He sat, adjusting his tie. "Chase loves you, Willa. This pregnancy, the stress. You're not thinking clearly." "Actually," Jenna interjected, sliding a folder across the table. "She's thinking very clearly. These are cease and desist orders for you, Chase and Maureen. Any further attempts to contact Willa will result in harassment charges." Leonard's facade cracked. "You ungrateful." A knock at the door interrupted him. The housekeeper entered, looking uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, but Mrs. Bennett is here. She's quite insistent." Before anyone could respond, Maureen burst in. Mascara streaked down her face. "How could you do this to Chase? He's been suspended from the firm." "The firm suspended him because he violated ethics protocols," Jenna stated flatly. "That's what happens when you conspire to defraud shareholders." "We were trying to help." Maureen's voice rose hysterically. "That company is dying. Chase was saving it. By secretly working with both sides of a hostile takeover." I stood, anger finally breaking through my careful control. "By using my father's death as an opportunity, your father was a fool." Leonard snapped, showing his true colors at last. "He could have sold years ago, made us all rich, but he was too stubborn." "Get out." My mother's voice could have cut glass. "Both of you, out of my house." "This isn't over," Leonard threatened, gathering his papers. "You have no idea what you're up against." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone. "I do." I played the audio I'd just recorded. Leonard's face went pale. "You can't use that. Watch me." I stepped closer, letting him see the fury I'd been containing. "You used my father's death, my pregnancy, my trust. All of it. Now I'm going to use everything I have to make sure you, Chase, and everyone involved pays for it." After they left, Jenna touched my arm. "You okay? Your blood pressure." "I'm fine." I wasn't, but I needed to focus. "What did you find out about Carlton Industries?" Jenna hesitated. "You were right. Chase wasn't the mastermind, the person behind all this. It's your father's old partner, the one who left the company 15 years ago." My mother gasped softly. "James Carlton, but he and your father were best friends." I remembered James Carlton at our family dinners, teaching me chess, attending my piano recitals. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. "He approached Chase 2 years ago," Jenna continued. "Used him to get inside information about the company's vulnerabilities." I sank into a chair, one hand on my stomach. My daughter kicked, as if sensing my distress. "So Chase wasn't just greedy. He was a puppet." "A willing puppet," my mother reminded me. I looked at the chess set in the corner. The one James Carlton had given me for my 16th birthday. "Then it's time to cut his strings." I turned to Jenna. "How quickly can you set up a meeting with the board?" "Willa," my mother warned. The doctor said to avoid stress." I stood, my decision made. Nothing would make me feel better than taking back what's mine. The Harper Industries boardroom felt colder than I remembered. Maybe it was the air conditioning, or maybe it was the way Chase sat at the far end of the table, flanked by James Carlton and a team of lawyers I didn't recognize. My father's empty chair at the head of the table seemed to watch us all. "Before we begin," James Carlton said, his familiar grandfatherly smile now seeming predatory, "I want to acknowledge Willa's presence. Douglas would be proud to see you taking an interest in the company." "Interesting choice of words," I replied, "considering you're trying to dismantle everything he built." Chase shifted uncomfortably. The board members, most of whom had known me since childhood, avoided my eyes. "The merger is a lifeline," James continued smoothly. "The market projections are manipulated." I interrupted, sliding folders to each board member. "Just like the company's stock price over the past 6 months." The room went silent. Chase's face strained of color. "That's a serious accusation," James said, his smile tightening. "It's not an accusation." I nodded to Jenna, who opened her laptop. It's evidence. My father suspected someone was artificially depressing the stock. That's why he hired investigators before he died. Chase stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Willa's pregnancy hormones. Sit down, Chase. James snapped, showing the first crack in his facade. Mrs. Harper, these conspiracy theories are documented in these files. I continued, including your private meetings with Chase, the offshore accounts, and the shell companies you've been using to buy up shares. The boardroom door opened. My mother walked in, followed by 2 SEC agents. What is this? James demanded. This, I said, standing despite my trembling legs, is what happens when you underestimate a pregnant woman with insomnia and access to her father's files. What happened? Next seemed to move in slow motion. James lunged for Jenna's laptop. Chase shouted something about being set up. The SEC agents moved forward. Then pain shot through my abdomen, sharp and terrifying. Willa, my mother's voice seemed far away. I gripped the table, spots dancing in my vision. The baby. Everything blurred. I was vaguely aware of being helped into a chair, of voices arguing, of Jenna calling an ambulance. This is your fault. I heard Chase say, if you hadn't pushed this. My fault. The pain made my voice shake, but the anger gave it strength. You betrayed everything. Our marriage, my father's trust, our daughter's future. I did it for us. Chase's mask finally cracked completely. James promised me partnership, control of the merged company. We could have had everything. Everything except integrity. I gasped as another pain hit. James Carlton's smooth voice cut through the chaos. This meeting is clearly over. Given Mrs. Harper's condition, the meeting continues, my mother announced. The SEC has what they need. And Willa has signed proxy powers to me in case of emergency. I wanted to smile at the shock on their faces, but the pain was getting worse. The paramedics arrived, asking questions I could barely focus enough to answer. The baby's going to be fine, Jenna whispered, squeezing my hand. But you have to let us handle this now. As they wheeled me out, I caught a final glimpse of the boardroom. Chase stood frozen, watching me leave, his ambitions crumbling around him. James Carlton was already in handcuffs. His grandfather act replaced by cold fury. My mother sat in my father's chair, her spine straight as steel, facing down the men who had tried to steal our family's legacy. In the ambulance, between waves of pain and fear, I thought about my father. About integrity and legacy, and what really matters when everything else falls apart. Your blood pressure's too high. The paramedic said, try to stay calm. Stay calm. While my marriage imploded, my father's company hung in the balance, and my baby's life might be at risk. I closed my eyes, feeling more alone than ever. Dad, I whispered, I could really use your help right now. 3 days after my hospital scare, I sat in my father's home office, surrounded by the life he'd built when Chase walked in unannounced. He looked terrible, unshaven, suit wrinkled, the polished facade completely gone. You shouldn't be here, I said, one hand protectively over my belly. The doctors had managed to stop the premature labor, but every moment still felt precarious. James Carlton was arrested this morning. Chase's voice cracked. The SEC is freezing accounts. They're calling it the biggest corporate fraud case in the state's history. I know. I kept my voice steady. I signed the final statements an hour ago. He moved closer, desperation rolling off him in waves. Willow, please. I can explain everything. Can you explain why you were working against my father while he was dying? Why you used our marriage, our baby, as cover for fraud? I did it because I was scared. The words exploded out of him. Do you know what it's like being married to Douglas Harper's daughter? Nothing I did was ever good enough. I stared at him, really seeing him for the first time. So you decided to destroy everything he built. I decided to prove I could be more than just your husband. Chase ran his hands through his disheveled hair. James promised me control of the merged company. Real power, not just reflected glory from the Harper name. And now you have nothing. We could still fix this. He knelt beside my chair, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. The prosecutors are offering a deal. If I testify against James. Stop. I opened my father's desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. I found this in Dad's safe. It's dated 2 days before he died. Chase went very still as I unfolded the letter. Dear Willa, I read aloud. If you're reading this, then my suspicions about Chase and James were correct. I'm sorry I won't be there to help you face this, but I know you're stronger than anyone realizes. Including yourself. Willa, he knew. I continued, my voice gaining strength. He knew what you were doing, but he wanted me to discover the truth on my own. To learn to trust my instincts. Your father was a stubborn old man who built something real. I cut him off. While you and James were plotting to steal it, he was teaching me how to protect it. Chase stood, his facade cracking completely. So that's it? Everything we had means nothing. It meant everything to me. I placed my father's letter back in the drawer. That's why your betrayal worked so well. The company will still fail without the merger. He said, a last desperate attempt. You're throwing away your inheritance out of spite. I smiled for the first time. Actually, while you were busy with your schemes, I was talking to our European partners. They're investing in a complete modernization of our production lines. The board approved it this morning. The color drained from his face. But James said they weren't interested. James lied, just like you did. I stood carefully, one hand on the desk for support. The divorce papers are with my lawyer. So is my statement to the SEC. You're really going to do this? His voice turned cold. Destroy me? The father of your child? No, Chase. You destroyed yourself. I walked to the door, then turned back. My father left you a message too. It's in the envelope. I waited while he opened it with trembling hands and read the single line. I gave you a chance to choose integrity. You chose greed. Chase crumpled the paper, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. Willow, wait. Goodbye, Chase. I stepped into the hallway where Jenna and my mother waited. The SEC agents are in the living room. They'll want to talk to you about those offshore accounts. As we left, I heard Chase calling my name. His voice echoing through the house where I'd grown up, where I'd fallen in love, where I'd finally learned to stand on my own. Are you okay? My mother asked softly. I touched my stomach, feeling my daughter kick, strong and determined, just like her grandfather. I will be. We both will be. 6 months later, I stood in my father's office. Now my office, holding my newborn daughter while watching Harper Industries stock price climb on the digital display. The European partnership had exceeded everyone's expectations, and the company was stronger than ever. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Jenna said, then smiled at the baby. How's little Douglas doing? She prefers Dougie. I corrected, adjusting my daughter's position. And she's helping me review quarterly reports. The newspaper on my desk caught my eye. A small headline about Chase's sentencing. 3 years, reduced from 5 for his testimony against James Carlton. His parents had fled to Florida, leaving behind a wake of unpaid debts and broken relationships. Have you read his letter? Jenna asked, noticing me looking at the paper. I nodded toward the unopened envelope on my desk. Chase's handwriting, once so familiar, now looked like a stranger's. Some things are better left unsaid. My mother appeared in the doorway, impeccably dressed for her role as interim CEO. Ready? The modernization proposal needs your final approval. As I gathered my things, a photo fell from my father's old diary. Dad and me at my first piano recital. Both of us beaming. Behind it, in his handwriting. Success isn't about winning, Willa. It's about knowing what's worth fighting for. He would be proud, my mother said softly. Not just of saving the company, but of how you did it. Without revenge, I added. Understanding finally hitting me. That's what he wanted me to learn. Anyone can destroy things. Building something better. That's the real victory. The boardroom looked different now. New faces mixed with old. The company evolving while keeping its core values. As I took my seat, Dougie sleeping peacefully in her carrier beside me, I thought about cycles of betrayal and redemption, of endings and beginnings. Before we start, I said, addressing the board, I want to announce a new initiative. We're establishing the Douglas Harper Foundation for Ethics in Business. Full scholarships for students who demonstrate integrity and innovation. I saw approval in the older board members' eyes. Understanding in the new ones. This was how you built a legacy, not by tearing others down, but by creating opportunities for something better. After the meeting, I found another note from my father tucked inside his old desk calendar. The hardest part of success isn't achieving it. It's deciding what kind of person you want to be when you get there. My phone buzzed with a text from Maureen. Chase asks about the baby. Please, just one photo. I deleted it without responding. Some bridges stay burned, not out of hatred, but because building new ones serves us better. M.S. Harper. My assistant appeared. The new production line supervisors are here for training. And your mother mentioned something about piano lessons for when Dougie's older? I smiled, remembering Sunday afternoons at the piano with Dad, his patience as I learned each note. Schedule both, and add weekly ethics seminars for all management levels. Later, as I drove home with Dougie, I passed the house where Chase and I had lived. New owners had painted it, planted different flowers, changed it into something new, just as I had changed my father's company into something that honored his values while facing forward. At a red light, I finally opened Chase's letter. Inside was a single line. I'm sorry I chose wrong. I let the wind take it through the car window, watching it disappear into the evening sky. Dougie stirred, her tiny hand gripping my finger with surprising strength. Ready to go home, little one? I asked, thinking of the piano waiting in our new house, of Sunday afternoons to come. Of lessons about integrity that can't be taught with words alone. The light turned green and we moved forward, leaving the past where it belonged. Not forgotten, but transformed into something wiser, stronger, and ultimately more valuable than revenge could ever be.